Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the True North Report. News everyone needs to know. We got a lot that's going on in the world today, so I want to get into it pretty quickly. But first, as always, I want to ask you all to check out the True North Report. Go there, share the link, share the stories. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and share this stream everywhere that you can. If you like the work that I do, then please feel free to donate to my Patreon account. The link is in the description. It'll help me to produce more content for you all here. So the first thing I wanted to get into today is about the world and the direction that it's going. As you probably noticed, if you've been paying attention, there's been quite a lot of protests, a lot of anger all across the world in all of these different countries. You've seen the protests that have gone on in Hong Kong. There's Iran right now, Iran protests that are going on after everything that ended up happening. And you know, like, there's always the occasional thing that's happening in the US. Actually, right now, also the British are protesting, and that actually has to do with something I want to cover in here if we got enough time. But it pretty much has to do with the story of how a lot of the rape gangs and what was going on over there in Britain, a lot of them were not being prosecuted simply for the fact that the offenders were minorities, they were immigrants, they were Muslims, or Asians, as a lot of the British press wants to call them, even though they're primarily from Pakistan and the Middle East. But, you know, it's to confuse people. You call them Asian, most people think of, like, Chinese or Japanese or something like that. So that's the reason I do it. But there's a lot of anger that's in the air. And it seems like in 2020, it's going to be much worse. Or at least that's according to a study. That's according to a study that went down. From Summit News, 40% of countries in the world to experience civil unrest in 2020. New reports warn social disorder will become more intense. Political analyst firm Varus Maplecroft predicts that 75 out of the world's 195 countries will see some form of social disorder this year. That's an increase on the 47 countries, about a quarter of the world's total, that saw civil unrest in 2019. The report predicts that the intensity of unrest are likely to be higher than 2019 due to the dangers of protesters being on the receiving end of human rights abuses by authorities. The study names major countries such as Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Thailand, and Brazil that are all likely to experience major social disorder. And we'll end up seeing whether that ends up happening in these countries. We are seeing how at least Hong Kong is facing this, and we'll see if that happens to branch out to China itself. And then we'll see about Saudi Arabia. I know that there's apparently a lot of people that don't like their current king, Mohammed bin Salman, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But the main reason I bring this up, is because, are any of you aware that this week marked the 62nd straight week that the French have been protesting? I wouldn't blame many people for not realizing that, because it's not being reported in our press. It's not being reported over here. It's not being, even places such as England, Great Britain, the UK, they're not reporting on this. And there's a reason for it. The main reason that they don't want to talk about what's going on in France is because this is very close to our borders. These are coming from a people that, at least here in Canada, we share a culture and a blood with. You know, we're talking about Quebec. They can trace their lineage back to France, just like a lot of us English speakers can trace our lineage back to the British and the UK. I happen to be I got some English in there, but I'm actually majority Scottish. So the reason that they don't want to do this is because here's a group of people that we can be a heritage with, a culture, a blood for many people. There's a blood relation there. And the similarities that we share with this country. They don't want to talk about this because this sort of thing will spread. This sort of thing will spread, and then we're going to see the demonstrations that happen in our own time, in our own homes. Now, I'm waiting for this to happen to Canada, but part of me is concerned that Canada is too passive. Canada doesn't have that revolutionary spirit that the Americans have. Canada was just, as a joke I heard once, they were used by a stand-up comedian. He said, let's face it, Canada, you guys gained your independence from asking nicely. And in a way, that's kind of true. It's a funny comparison. So that revolutionary spirit is not ingrained in us, but it is ingrained in the French people, who have had revolution after revolution to throw off these dictators that they've had. I can't remember exactly how many times, but it's happened. But I think upon averaging out in more recent history, it was like every 60 years. France has a major protest, a revolution against the current government for one reason or another. Now, this is what was happening yesterday. This was put up on January 18th, 2020. France, tear gas billows in streets of Paris at Yellow Vest protest. So actually, despite everything that we're seeing, it seems rather calm. You know, there's still revolution going on, there was still some conflict, but this is not telling the whole story. And we're going to get into some videos of what we had. Now, the reason that this is happening, according to the press, even some of the French press, is that this has to do with the pension reforms that are going on, that Macron's government is trying to implement, and that people are not happy with it. But it's more than that. It's kind of like how last year they were telling us that the gas tax was the reason that people were protesting, and that may have been the final straw last year to start everything, but it's more than that. It's a lot more than that. They are not happy with the current government that they have. And I think actually a lot of Canadians will be able to relate to what the French people are going through when I read to you what I got today. Now, I reached out on underneath some of the hashtags on Twitter that were being used. Hashtag Yellow Vest, Gilet Jaune, Act 62, and what was the last one? It was Grève. Hold on. It was Grève 19 janvier. Strike January 19th. And I said, I come from Canada. Can someone tell me why the citizens are protesting? Is it solely because of the pension reforms, or is it other things? Now, I was pretty sure that this was the case, but I needed to have somebody in the area just confirm it for me before I actually went out and said this. And as this reply from this guy Bill Carson said, he said, Macron is a dictator who doesn't listen to the people and is trying to impoverish us. The what was that word again? Mépris. The contempt and humiliation of the French people are two lines of his 5-year mandate, his 5-year government. So all about impoverishing the French people and humiliating them. That sounds quite familiar to what we have going on here at home, doesn't it? Sounds quite familiar with what we deal with Trudeau, about how he has taken the time to demonize Canadians. He's taken the time to make old stock Canadians, as he was calling them, make them feel like they're in the wrong, like this country isn't for them, and that this country is built for everybody else, all the minorities, all the people he brings in, these large swaths of immigrants that he brings in, and the quote-unquote refugees. Those people that he brings in, and this is that he's making Canada for them. He's giving them the benefits while he's taking those benefits away from citizens. And as I respond to this guy, I said, I was pretty sure that it was lack of representation, and this is because a few months ago, there was a video that was put out where Yellow Vest protesters were meeting with government officials, and in that, despite the fact what we were told about the gas tax, about this is why people were protesting, it turned out that they were saying that they didn't feel represented in their own government, that their government wasn't working for them, but was working against them. So I said, I had a feeling it was a lack of representation, but the news was only reporting, if they even reported on it, that it was about the pensions. Our Prime Minister, Trudeau, is doing the same thing to Canadians. I respect your resilience against submission. Thank you and good luck. And he pretty much just told me at the end, right here, he says, the pension reforms were the straw that broke the camel's back for public employees, and there are a lot of them in France. So this is the thing about this, is there's a lot of not just the private sector workers and the regular citizens, but these are public sector workers, people who work for the government that are now protesting against this very government. And in response to this fresh clash between the citizens and the government, Macron pretty much told them that you have two choices, me or chaos. That was pretty much, that is actually word for word what he told them. Now, when all this was going on yesterday, because this is where a lot of the drama came out of it that we're going to see, and actually a lot of it came out of Paris, that what we're going to watch. But while this was all going on, do you know what was trending on Twitter for Canada? Trending in Canada on Twitter. #Megxit. Talking about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle moving to Canada and how they were no longer using their Royal Highness titles. And here we have it here. Of course, breaking from the post-millennial, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will no longer be used their royal ties. And I kind of responded to this, and I said, while all this was going on, while you were reporting on this, this is what was happening in France. And I posted a video of one of the videos we're going to watch. I can't remember exactly which one, but here we go. These were coming out yesterday. All you had to do was follow the hashtags. So this is the first charge of police in Paris against the protesters. Now, at this point, the protesters did not seem to be violent. So the police charged into them and began beating the people. So as people, the non-violent protesters at this point, there definitely were violent protesters, but this ended up happening after the police assaulted them, after they attacked them. They end up going in with billy clubs. And then they start making these arrests, but they're making arrests on people that are trying to run away, trying to get away from the violence that was brought in. Which should tell you something. But it gets much worse from there. Here is a video of a cop, and there's a few cops actually, that began assaulting the protesters because he had water thrown on him. But wait, it gets worse. Here is a protester being arrested. And while he's being arrested, there's someone recording what's happening. And this person gets shot by a beanbag. The cops turn around, even though he is no threat to them, and shoot him with a beanbag. I believe it's a beanbag. Shot at the LBM. But anyway.
Ouais, vas-y! Vas-y! Hey, il est en train de taper un mec, là! Hey, il est en train de taper! Hey, espèce de fils de pute, va! Accorde! Hey, gros porc, va! On va te niquer ta race! Fils de pute, enculé, tape-le encore. Ah, ils sont LBD là, bâtard.
So someone who did absolutely nothing, was standing there and recording, was shot with, it could have been a rubber bullet, it could have been a beanbag, that's not exactly clear. But the police shot him for doing nothing. But it gets worse. So keep your eye here, in the middle, on the cop who has the protester on the ground.
Pourquoi vous êtes méchant comme ça? Pourquoi vous êtes méchant comme ça, monsieur? Oh, il frappe! Attendez, regardez votre collègue, qu'est-ce qu'il fait? Regardez votre collègue, qu'est-ce qu'il fait, monsieur? Vous avez vu votre collègue, qu'est-ce qu'il fait? Regardez ce qu'il fait! Il est en train de lui frapper, qu'il freine! Mais ayez un petit peu de pitié! Ayez un petit peu de pitié, Manon! Regardez qu'est-ce qu'il fait!
Vous avez même pas de conscience.
Vous êtes dégueulasse! Dégueulasse!
Vous êtes la honte de la France. Même dans les autres prisons.
Now, I'm not sure, but I kind of got going by some of what was being said. I believe that this was related to one of the first videos that we watched, where we saw that the cops had the water thrown on them. I think it was related to this. This was one of the guys getting arrested. Now, apparently, the French police and the French government are opening an inquiry into this event here. They're opening an inquiry into this video that was released. But just this video. Just these cops involved. And most likely just the one cop who was actually doing the hitting. The chances of this cop actually having some repercussion against him are slim. Because in this situation, what they're going to argue is that it was a chaotic situation, you know? These cops, they were under a lot of stress, you know, there were a lot of violent protesters, and, you know, he may have just snapped. So they're not going to do much. He'll probably get a little bit of time off, most likely with pay. But nothing is going to be said about the rest of the police officers that are standing around letting this happen. But it gets worse. Now, this kid, I don't know if I actually have the video pulled up. Shit. I think I forgot to pull up that video, too. This kid, what he was doing, there's a video that was put out, and you can easily identify that this kid here, or this young man, kind of hard to tell, his great crime that he did was walking behind cops dancing to music. Because there's a video released of the SWAT police, these riot police, that are walking, and there's a crowd of them following them. Non-violent crowd of protesters. He's among them. Someone was blaring music over them, and he, along with a few other people, are dancing. And next thing you know, here he ends up on the ground, being beaten by police.
Allez-y les gars, c'est bien, frappez, frappez.
Now here we have again them beating someone on the ground.
Vas-y, mais frappe. Oh, allez, viens frapper, viens frapper.
Oh, this one's brutal. This one is brutal. Watch it.
Oh! Allez, voilà. Regardez, il saigne. Voilà. Non, non, c'est honteux.
Laissez-le! Eddie!
Il en prend deux.
Merde! J'aurais pas le droit de faire ça!
Voilà.
Dégage. Dégage. Reculez, s'il vous plaît, monsieur.
Just want to see some. He got pushed, right? The cameraman?
Voilà.
Dégage.
Yeah. They pushed the cameraman. My guess is because he got too close. Regardless, unacceptable. But they beat this man. Smash his head into the ground. Take his head and smash it there, and then shoves his knee on there. Now, I'm not sure whether any of his teeth were knocked out, or whether he just had a bloody nose, or what. But at this point, he was not really resisting. But this is what they're doing over there, the police in France. I thought there was one more I had. Hold on. Was it this one? We saw this one already. Hold on. There's one in particular that I had saved. Officer. That guy. There's another one. Ah, here we go. A cop here uses a billy club to beat subdued protesters. Another one. This is what the people in France are dealing with right now. The police are dealing with a heavy hand, taking out all of these people who are protesting. And regardless, this sort of action by the police is completely unacceptable. This is the type of action you see in a dystopian future. This is the type of action that maybe some of the British people would recognize this comic, but when I was younger, I liked to read a comic that was called Judge Dredd. And the whole plot behind it was that in the future, after a World War III, the law and order was the whole society was completely crumbling. So what ended up happening is the judges, who, you know, in our society, they simply judge. They actually came out from behind their desk and acted as judge, jury, and executioner. So they became the police. And this was a dictatorial government that was ruled by the judges. And they dealt with everything with a heavy hand. So in protest, they came in and just beat the shit out of everybody. If you committed a crime, they could literally judge you right on the spot. They could come in and just, you know, what happened here, and then they make the determination, say, you know what, you're guilty, and you're sentenced to 5 years in prison. And that all could happen in your entire trial, from the crime, from the time they stop you to the time your trial's over, maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. And it was supposed to be setting a dystopian future. Mass surveillance, you know, drones everywhere. They tapped every single piece of technology, so they constantly knew what was going on. It's a comic, so of course they also even had psychic judges that were reading people's thoughts, so that way they could pretty much stop you before you committed a crime. And this is what it seems like. This is the sort of dictatorial government that people are worried about. I mean, did you not notice that all those cops, pretty much every single one, was wearing a balaclava? Did you see any badges present? They're hiding their identity while they commit their crimes. And that's another thing that's going to be a problem with this inquiry into this one police officer that was punching someone who was on the ground, is the fact they don't know who they are. They're not going to be able to identify, and that could be a perfect defense to say, how do you know that was me? You know, we all look alike. You have no proof that it's actually me who was punching him. The thing is, though, is that when the police are prepared to act like this, when they're prepared to just beat the public senseless, especially in a place like France, who has a history of not just overthrowing their government, but executing the people at the top. These are the type of people that one day the French people are going to have enough. They've dealt with it for a freaking year. They're going to have enough. And they are going to string these cops up. They are going to make nooses, and they are going to hang them right in the public square for everyone to see. When you see videos like this, it really reinforces the idea that cops are a legal gang. But it's not just France that is going through some shit right now. Virginia is also going through some shit down in the US. The state of Virginia, under the leadership of Ralph Northam, Governor Ralph Northam, is having a crisis because Ralph Northam is trying to put forward 2 bills. Now, his government has been acting on the red flag laws that have been implemented, which pretty much, it's the epitome of feelings over facts. That if somebody makes an anonymous complaint saying they think you're going to commit a crime or they feel unsafe by the fact that you own a gun, the police will come in, take your weapons, and then you need to go to them and prove your innocence. Now, people have already died because of this law, so thank you for that, Dan Crenshaw, the so-called Republican hero. He was instrumental in writing the red flag laws and the TAPS Act. So people have already died because they're unwilling to give up their guns to the police. It's their right. The Second Amendment gives them that right. Or it's supposed to give them that right anyway, but you know what? Rights really seem to be more like privileges, even though they're not supposed to work that way. Because whenever you need your rights the most, they're not there for you, or they have no problem circumventing it. So this is a piece that I wrote, how the Virginian government is prepping for a war against its own citizens. They're prepping for this because not only are you starting to see many more cops, such as SWAT police, or just SWAT, I guess I should say, not even SWAT police or SWAT officers, but you got SWAT members that are now starting to be seen. They've got heavily armored cops that are starting to be seen, and this is because tomorrow, Monday, January 20th, there is supposed to be a rally. There's supposed to be a rally in the state capital of Virginia, at the Capitol buildings, by Second Amendment supporters in order to try and protect their rifles. And in fact, unbelievably, they are joined, the Second Amendment right-wingers are joined by the local Antifa chapter. They are going to be there at their protest, but not to counter-protest. They are going to be there in support with the Second Amendment advocates. So I really don't know what's going on in the world right now. It's a little unbelievable to me that that's the case. But something else that's been coming in. Oh, you know what? We'll check out this video in a minute. It's very interesting. This has been popping up lately, and it's the Rook. Hold on. I'll pull up the image for you. It's known as the Rook. And this armored vehicle is built around a Caterpillar, the construction trucks. It's built around the Caterpillar. There we go. And it has several different attachments for police to use. This was seen being brought into Virginia. So as you can kind of see right here, it has where you drive it. And this front piece right here, this front part, what it is you can see a better picture down here. You know what? I'll just load it up. What it is it's a mobile platform where police can hide behind it. It's a shield. Whoop. Hold on. There we go. It's a shield where you can see that you have officers hiding behind it that'll keep them safe from gunfire, but has a slat there in order for them to actually be able to shoot down. Now, the reason for this, or like the purpose behind it, of course, is so they can get up close to an area if ever necessary, maybe in like a hostage situation, or that's what it's supposed to be for. But now this is most likely going to be used against the citizens of Virginia. And then down here, It's another attachment. This attachment is to assist them in taking out. What they say? Is a grapple claw. Thank you. I was forgetting that word. It's a grapple claw, so they can take off roofs to a building and all sorts of clear debris from a road, things such as that. Another attachment, which they didn't have a picture for, but was also known is a hydraulic breaching ramp so they can quickly get through a wall or a door if necessary. But this is being brought in. Now, the Civil War is not going to start until the American government, and in this case the Virginian government, are prepared to take down the civilians, to take down the public. And this is the point. And it seems like they're getting some help. Because this was issued on the 2nd of January 2020. What's going on here has been going on for a long time now. We're talking well over a month now that these protests have been going on. And it says here, from the Virginia Israel Advisory Board, at the invitation of Governor Ralph Northam, the Israeli Military of Defense is bringing a delegation of 20 Israeli companies with autonomous systems, avionics, and naval technology to the Commonwealth February 3rd through 6th, 2020. Now, these Israeli companies include the 3 largest Israeli defense contractors, are seeking the source of $100 million in goods and services, develop R&D, manufacturing, and sales partnership with Virginia concerns. This is going to be used for, see down here, where is it? The companies can provide homeland security, law enforcement and SWAT, and critical infrastructure protection for the most innovative and operationally proven technologies in the world. So we're talking drones. This is exactly what this is. Unmanned systems, naval and avionics, they're planning, if anything happens, to use drones against this. And I think something's going to go down. Something is going to go down in Virginia. And it's most likely going to be a false flag, because this was released and since has been taken down. Evansville seeking actors for ongoing live role-playing project. Hostile environment awareness training. Key courses are designed to prepare NGO staff for operating in challenging international environments through in-person simulation. Actors take on a variety of roles: terrorists, IED victims, hostage, and rescue teams throughout each workshop. The work can be intense, both physically and mentally, but is also very rewarding. They're hiring crisis actors for Virginia. This was released on the 14th. Now, that doesn't prove anything, but considering what's going on right now in the entire state, it's pretty fucking weird that now they chose the time to do it. And let's just see how serious things have gotten. We'll watch this video by a police officer. Okay, good. I did take down the images. We'll watch this video by a police officer who was talking about the situation in Virginia and how bad it's gotten. Let me just, I want to quickly check the audio on it.
I work plainclothes law enforcement.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, quality's so bad. That was the quality that the video came with. So let's get into it. 1 minute long.
I work plainclothes law enforcement. I walk around without a uniform. People don't see my badge. People don't see my gun. And I can tell you, people are angry. And I am frightened. To the point that I am looking at moving my wife and child, my child-to-be, March, my wife and child out of the state if these bills pass. The reason is because my fellow law enforcement officers, I've heard on more than one occasion, tell me that they would not enforce these bills regardless of whether they believe in them ideologically, because they believe that there are so many people angry in gun shops, gun shows, at bars. We have heard it now. People talking about tar and feathering politicians in a less than joking manner. People talking about fighting with violence over their concern with Senate Bill 16 and Senate Bill 64.
The most telling thing about that is that when he said that there are people talking about tarring and feathering politicians in less than joking manner, and people cheered and clapped for it. Now, you're not going to find any criticism from me. I don't want violence to be the answer, but sometimes violence is the answer, and politicians all across the world have let people down. So let's just say I would not shed any tears should this happen. Even if it happened here, in Canada. I would not shed any tears for the politicians.
Politicians in a less than joking manner. People talking about fighting.
But you've really reached a crisis. You've really screwed up representing the people when they are talking about tarring and feathering you, and the people there cheer. Now, he makes reference to Senate Bill 16 and Senate Bill 64. What are these going to do? Here's Senate Bill 16. Assault firearms and certain firearm magazines, prohibition, sale, transport, etc. penalties. So, the bill will expand the definition of assault rifle and prohibits any person from importing, selling, transferring, manufacturing, purchasing, possessing, or transporting a assault firearm. Not a term, assault firearm, as has been proven time and time again. Assault rifle is not an official term for a firearm. It's a rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle. But violation of this is a Class 6 felony. So it's extremely prohibiting what type of guns you can have, what you can do with that gun, where you can take it, who you can sell it to, and how many rounds of ammunition you can have. That's Senate Bill 16. And then you have Senate Bill 64. Paramilitary activities penalty. Provides that a person is guilty of unlawful paramilitary activity if such person assembles with another person with the intent of intimidating any person or group of persons by drilling, parading, or marching with any firearms, any explosive or incendiary devices, or any components or combination thereof. Such unlawful paramilitary activity is punishable as a Class 5 felony. So this is not going to allow any sort of parades or rallies where guns will be there. So these Second Amendment rallies, people can't have them, and people won't be able to just have them and show them off. This is also going to pretty much destroy any sort of militias that are in the area, that are in Virginia, because this will be seen as as paramilitary activities. Because they can easily say that militias are intent of intimidating a person or groups of person. Militias drill. Militias may go marching through the streets. So if these bills were to pass, then what is planned for tomorrow, this rally, would be outlawed. Well, it wouldn't be outlawed outright. It would be outlawed in the fact that they would not be able to have their weapons there. The thing is this was already challenged in court. A few gun rights groups tried to take this to court, but the judge ruled against them, saying that it was not limiting them enough to actually infringe on the Second Amendment. But clearly, Governor Northam is worried about this. He's worried about this because of the fact that he's arming his police officers in the area. He's bringing in armored vehicles to be used against the citizens, and they're even bringing in Israeli defense contractors. That says a lot about the current situation and how bad it really is. And some people have already speculated, have had skepticism. They've had skepticism about whether the fact that Northam would actually go to war with its own citizens. whether he would use these excessive forces against the people, whether he be prepared to use drones against the people. Well, for anybody with that skepticism, go ask the victims of Waco whether the government will do that. Waco, where the government surrounded them. The government fired first. The government brought in Delta Force, a military unit, and I think there were Navy SEALs there too, where they murdered people outright. They brought in tanks. They made airstrikes against them. They dropped bombs on a bunker that was housing women and children and killed them. They burned the compound to the ground. Cops, members of Delta Force that were in the area, took pictures with the bodies of the dead. And then they covered it up. Did you know that during Waco, any footage, any sort of footage that was gathered during that time, before it was released to the public, and I'm not talking about the news reports sort of thing that was going on at the time, but any sort of thing that was taking place inside, in the moment, any police officers that had video cameras, any pictures that were taken in there, because the press had to stay a certain distance away. They could only really see what was going on from the outskirts. But any sort of footage, any sort of pictures that was brought in, that was taken in the moment by the police or the military or any of them, did you know that it had to first go through the First Lady before it was released to the public? The First Lady at the time was Hillary Clinton. This happened while Bill Clinton was in office. And they covered it up. And even to today, they try and cover it up. There was a series that was released. I'm trying to remember if it was Netflix or HBO. I think it may have been HBO. That released talking about Waco. And the presentation of it was that it was a colossal fuck up. That nobody really wanted to murder the people at the compound. Nobody wanted to actually it to go this far, and they felt awful about it. That's not what happened. They deliberately murdered these people. They use military force against its own civilians, something that is not allowed. You cannot use military force against civilians. You can't use military artillery, military vehicles. You can't use this against the civilians. That didn't stop them, and it didn't stop them from covering up. So don't think, anybody who's skeptical about this, do not think they won't do it again. Even if it's a state government, not the federal government, they will do it. I have no doubt that there are members of the military that are there now. The National Guard was... People were theorizing whether the National Guard was going to call in. Governor Northam even said that he was thinking about it. Now, there's been no confirmation on that. There's been no actually official request to bring in the National Guard to help the confiscation of firearms. But whether the National Guard would do it is the question. But this situation is going to get bad. And you listened to that testimony. You listened to what that man said, that cop, when he spoke about that, about how people were ready to kill politicians. People are ready to die for their guns. All right. Let's see. Do I want to do this story first? Yeah, all right. We'll do this one next. There was something interesting that was happening with Apple phones, with Siri. You may have already heard about this. But here is an article out of the Post-Millennial. If you ask Siri who the president of Israel is, she becomes anti-Semitic. Ooh, look at that. Numerous people discovered that if you ask your iPhone who the president of Israel is, it would respond with a highly problematic answer. Reuven Rivlin is the president of Zionist occupation state. First of all, I love how they use the language of what they criticize is the language of the social justice warriors, but moving on, that's neither here nor there. And they start linking to this and say to different people that were reporting on this, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, what is this? You can watch the video.
Hey Siri, who's the president of Israel?
Reuven Rivlin is the president of the Zionist occupation state.
So that's what was being said. Now, why did this end up happening? It's because it's the same thing that can happen with Alexas. And the fact is that this knowledge is not built into the AI. The AI scours the internet in order to find this knowledge. And the main source it goes to is Wikipedia. Someone had changed this on Wikipedia. So it had nothing to do with Siri or Apple. It had everything to do with Wikipedia, and someone made that changes to Reuven Rivlin and said he was the president of the president of the Zionist occupation state. Now, they would have you believe that this is a huge deal, that plenty of people are outraged by it. And you can even see, look at all these people they link to and how terrible it is. Why are they so outraged? Most people would be like, what the fuck? But a lot of them seem to be very outraged about this. Now, why would that be? Let's take a look through. Peter Fox. He was the first one they linked to. Here's Mr. Peter Fox, right? Writer. I write. I schmooze. I talk about news. Contributor to JD Forward and Tablet Mag. Hopeful Mets fan. I punctuate sentence with unicorns for emphasis. Okay. That's weird. That's a weird addition to have. And then, why is he so outraged? I once had a Hebrew school teacher devote an entire class to the existential question, are we American Jews or Jewish Americans? Which is kind of funny because, you know, the whole idea of dual loyalty is not an acceptable answer, not an acceptable question to the Jewish people. Of course they're loyal to their country, but apparently they have to ask the question, are they American first and they're Jewish, or are they Jewish first and then American? So that's kind of ironic. But here we go. Peter Fox is Jewish. Of course he'd be offended by it. Now what about Carol over here? Carol Markowitz. Ooh. Oh, yeah, this is that one. Oh, did I just lose it? Here we go. Can Jews just take a few days where no one talks about us at all? So she's Jewish as well. I think you're starting to see a pattern here. Yakov Polak, the video that we watched. Proud Canadian, Jewish, conservative, photographer, gun owner. I'm just deleting these since we already gone through them. But as you can see. Now this one, Rita Panahi, is not, as far as I can tell, she's not Jewish. But boy, does she like to talk about them a lot and defend them at every single corner. These are all references to being Jewish. Just her. Over and over and over again. So she may not be Jewish, but she's a proud Zionist, no doubt. And then we got Neon Taster, another one that was on that. How do you do, fellow Jews? So they literally, in the article, linked to everyone that was Jewish who was outraged by this. Now, there's a lot of people out there that feel this is the whole thing about Israel, that it's a Zionist-occupied state, which it is. They've taken countless amounts of territory with no repercussions. They pretend that they annexed this territory as if it was done the way it was with Kiev in Ukraine, about how it was a vote that took place. Now, we could debate back and forth. Was it a manipulated vote? Did Russia get involved in order for them to vote themselves out of Ukraine in favor for Russia? We could have that argument, back and forth. But the point is it wasn't a hostile takeover. Not like what's going on. The ironic thing, too, about this whole situation is they're upset because the Wikipedia was changed to this. When Israel literally constantly changes what's going on in Wikipedia.
Moetzet Yesha, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged instruction day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
I came here to learn more about how we as Israelis and as Jews can defend Israel online, on the internet, and particularly in Wikipedia in this case. Wikipedia is a bit of a complex system, and it's sometimes hard to figure out the rules. I've personally tried to edit things in Wikipedia that were against Israel, small things, and my changes were erased or undone, and I didn't understand why. And I think that this kind of knowledge is important for anyone who wants to be active in defending Israel on the internet, so that we can go and we can see the information and we can say this isn't quite right, it's showing one side of the story, and I have the power and the right to change that. And in general, it's so important for us to be online, working to defend ourselves and to prove to the world and to ourselves that we are just and we are right. And because right now, if you look online, if you do searches for certain terms related to Israel, it's just filled with anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and garbage. And there's not enough of us out there working to counteract that and make sure that the other side of the story, our side of the story, and our right side of the story is getting the right coverage and the coverage that it needs. So this type of initiative and initiatives like that to educate and promote defense of Israel online are extremely important, and I hope we'll see more of this in the future.
So my question to you is, how many other countries in the world have classes to manipulate the content that's online in favor of them? Because this is what they're doing. What country needs to do that? Do you think the Russians have classes that do this? No. Do the Iranians? No. Do the Americans or the Chinese have classes like this? Now, it's different when we're talking about intelligence agencies that are doing this. That's quite possible. It's a good way to get out their propaganda. But for the average citizen, and you know what? Excuse me. Sorry about that, everyone. Hold on. I want to see something here. I may still have it. Is it here? It was a video. Yeah, it's right here, actually. Let's watch this. This is literally a branch of the Israeli Defense Force. A branch of the Israeli Defense Force. Their whole point is just to go online and anybody that says anything negative about Israel, their point is to counteract it.
It is well known nowadays that what happens on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube has great influence on events as they occur on the ground. The internet, too, is a battleground. It is thus comforting to learn that the IDF employs soldiers whose job titles are new to the military world. The IDF now has soldiers who tweet, share, like, and more.
I just wrote a tweet about how many suspected terrorists were arrested in the West Bank last night. about every day we update the Twitter first thing in the morning how many were arrested, and I just wrote a tweet about it.
What kind of commentary do you get to that kind of tweet?
For the most part, we get retweets, which are basically when the user takes what we tweeted out and they make it their status on Twitter. And then most of the comments we get are very polarizing. We get very positive comments like, good job, and then we get very negative comments.
We meet the soldiers of the IDF spokesman's unit, New Media Desk, on another routine day in which they surf the web's blogs and social worlds. The reader's response, or talkbacks, are also an opening for much anti-Israel and anti-Semitic content. The IDF blocked the option of talkbacks to videos on its YouTube channel. However, it promises that on other channels, which include a Facebook page that is about to...
You get the picture. The point is they browse social media constantly in order to manipulate the information that's out there. Now, why do you suppose that they do that? And it actually starts to beg the question, are the people that you deal with online that push this pro-Israel, pro-Zionism, anti-Palestinian rhetoric, are they real people, or are they just members of the Israeli Defense Force, members of Mossad that are trying to manipulate your data? And the reason that they have to do this, the reason they have to scrub Wikipedia, the reason that they have to do this is because it's to cover up for the truth of what's going on over there. This is an article that was released today, but it's actually talking about an event that took place years ago. It says, Israeli troops killed British photographer in Gaza. While taking pictures of Israeli attacks on Palestinian children, Tom saw 3 little girls could not flee to safety. He saved one. When he was back to the others, he was shot by an Israeli sniper. To hide their crimes, Israeli occupation troops killed British photographer Tom Herndale, 22, in the occupied Gaza Strip 17 years ago. So this ended up happening in 2003. It looks like April 11th, 2003. He watched children playing nearby. Suddenly came under Israeli rifle fire. Now, why would children be coming underneath Israeli sniper fire? What the hell were they doing firing at kids? Most of the children fled, but 3 of them, aged 4 to 7, froze with fear as the Israeli gunfire continued. Tom rushed one of them to safety. When he returned to get the 2 little girls, an Israeli sniper shot him in the head. Despite the urgency, Israeli officials delayed his transport to specialized medical care for over 2.5 hours. Tom remained in a vegetative state until his death 9 months later. And this has affected all sorts of people around the world that are going there to help out. I mean, I think it's coming up on 2 years ago now. There was the Palestinian March for Return for all these people that had their land stolen from them, had their houses stolen from them. I'm sure you remember it. It was huge news. Even they couldn't cover for how bad this was because, we can quickly look it up, although I'm just going to use Wikipedia. Let's hope they didn't scrub it all. How many people? 183 dead, 9,204 shot, hit by shrapnel or tear gas canisters, including 6,106 injured by snipers, leading to life-changing wounds in many. Now, there's definitely some criticism for some of the things that ended up happening. There was one situation where a Palestinian baby was killed, and I believe it was due to tear gas. But what ended up happening, as I understand the story, was the fact that the parents were at this protest along the border, and it was an uncle that was looking after him. And the uncle took the baby and brought him to the border. Now, that was a stupid thing to do. But regardless, people that were demonstrating, they were not allowed to come within 300 meters of the fence, of the border there, or they were shot. And the thing is, too, is they say here, over 6,000 injured by snipers, leading to life-changing wounds in many. This is a tactic used by the Israeli government, Israeli IDF. The tactic is that they're sadistic in this nature. See, you can find videos, maybe they're still on YouTube unless they've been scrubbed. I'm sure if you look at somewhere like Live Leaks, you might be able to find them. But of Israeli IDF soldiers who like snipers in them, who, the way that they talk about the Palestinian, calling them cockroaches and things such as this, and shooting them that aren't even a threat. I know I saw one years ago. Actually, I don't think it was that long ago. It's probably only like last year or something. But I saw a video of one where there was 3 guys that were kind of just walking along the perimeter, not even close to the fence. And the IDF just shot him in the head. One of them in the head. The thing is, too, is that the whole reason that there's so many that were shot and injured with life-threatening changes is, again, this is sadistic. This is fun for them. They do this because they shoot people in the knees or the thigh or the fucking groin. And what ends up happening is you've seen the caliber on those bullets for sniper rifles and the power that a sniper rifle has behind them. It does so much damage that they need to get their limbs amputated. So then the rest of their lives, these Palestinians are stuck in a wheelchair. It's sadistic and disgusting what they're doing to the people over there. And when I think of the Israelis referring to the Palestinians as cockroaches, when I think of this, it reminds me a lot of the movie Hotel Rwanda, for anybody that saw it, with Don Cheadle. Because in that movie, and I'm pretty sure this was based, what happened in Hotel Rwanda was based on true events. Of course, there's always Hollywood drama inserted into it. But there is the Hutus who ended up slaughtering the Tutsis. They referred in that movie to the Tutsis as cockroaches before they slaughtered them. And I believe this was actually true in real life, that this is the way that they describe them. When you compare a human life to that of a cockroach, what do you do with cockroaches? You exterminate them. And this is what they're slowly doing to the Palestinian. They're stealing their land. It's ethnic genocide. We can just see all the land that has been taken over time. Yeah, look at that. This, maybe we can get a better image of it. So, in the white is Jewish land, in the green is Palestinian land. First image, 1946. Second image, 1947. Third image, 1949 to 1967. And the fourth image, 2000. Now, the thing is that I actually don't usually give the Jewish people a hard time between 1946 and 1947 because there was a war that ended up happening. But on top of that, it was not actually part of international law yet and the rules of warfare that the idea of taking land through conquest. This ended up happening after this situation. I believe it was either in the 50s or the early 60s. But the rest of this is completely illegal, what they're doing. But they keep taking more and more. They bulldoze houses in order to give that land to their own people. Well, the thing is about Gaza, too, before I move on to that video, is Gaza, they like to talk about how Gaza is a terrorist state, and they're constantly launching rockets into it. I don't even think it's been a year since it looked like there was going to be another Gazan war, because as everyone was going on about it, it was that there were 400 rockets in one night that was launched from Gaza into Israel. But what nobody talked about, no one in the news, no one online, or at least not those that were Israel supporters, what no one talked about was the fact that leading up to that event, the Israelis were inside of Gaza attempting to assassinate, and they successfully assassinated a Hamas, that's Hamas over there, a Hamas, I don't think it was a general, but it was a Hamas official, a high-ranking military official, and they managed to do it. And in the process of them speeding out of there, they fired countless shots all around. They were firing their guns like crazy in whatever vehicle they were using to get away, and they even used an airstrike against the people in there. And then, when they got attacked by 400 rockets, they claimed, they pleaded and said, "Look at us, poor us." But the thing is Gaza, as it's described, is an open-air prison. They even watch the calories of the people there. People are starving to death in Gaza because they don't have the food. They're being blockaded by the ocean, which is not allowed, and they're blockaded all around by Israel. And even there's no help from Egypt, who's just to their southwest. Egypt does not help the Palestinians living in Gaza. In fact, hold on. Let's check out something over here. Gaza calorie count. How Israel made sure Gaza didn't starve. But what they were doing was they were making sure that there was they couldn't get an abundance of food. In fact, a lot of the tunnels that they like to make reference to, these are used by terrorists. The real reason those tunnels were started up, and I'm sure they're being used by people by some of the Palestinians there in order to launch attacks, but the real reason it was doing was to smuggle in food. And I've seen different numbers, because this is about the average calorie you need for an adult male, I believe it is. There were people that were starving to death. They were keeping them in a perpetual state of hunger. This is what they were doing down there. And then this was a recent video that was released about the way that the IDF treat the Palestinians. I think this was in the West Bank. It's the ritual abuse of the Palestinian people. Look at the savagery of he's calling the Israeli offensive force, which it really is. They say it's a defensive force. It's not. The Israeli offensive force, during the house demolition operation in Yada village, residents were beaten and several were arrested. Now what the hell are they doing arresting people in their own land? And it's not the first time they've done this, because probably you remember a couple years ago, there was Ahmed Tamimi who ended up getting arrested. And this was the video. So she was arrested for the terrible crime the horrendous crime of slapping and kicking an IDF soldier. And why did she kick the soldier? Because they shot her cousin. This is her cousin. This is what they did to this poor kid. I believe he was 8 years old at the time. I think. Hold on. See if it says it. So it says, at the point where he was shot in the head with one bullet from a distance of a few meters and fell bleeding to the ground from a height of 3 meters, nearly 10 feet. I don't think it says his age on here. I actually think he might be a little bit older than 8. But this is what they did to her cousin and why she ended up slapping him. They shot a kid. Now, I actually thought at first that it was a non-lethal round, but I haven't found that in the article at all. Nothing about a beanbag, nothing about a rubber bullet. I believe it was shot with a real bullet to this kid. And then even more recently, Israel intentionally drowns $500,000 worth of Gaza crops. Israel's recent destruction of crops in food-strapped Gaza has resulted in nearly $500,000 of damage, Palestinians have said. Over the weekend, Israeli forces poisoned crops in the besieged Gaza Strip by pumping large amounts of rainwater into its farmland. They turned on the rainwater collection dams along the border with the besieged enclave, causing around 1 square kilometer of agricultural land planted with wheat, barley, peas, cabbage, and cauliflower to sink. According to a statement released by the Palestinian Agricultural Ministry on Sunday, Israel's uncontrolled opening of a water dam's gates has caused $500,000 worth of damage to agricultural areas in the besieged territory. So they barely get enough food. And this is what they have to deal with. It's quite sad, to be honest. It's really sad. And we are going to end the day talking about this. Fears over race relations affecting police probe into child sex grooming gangs, reports suggest. Investigation identified 57 potential victims and 97 suspects in Manchester, but also no action taken amid fears of inciting racial hatred. Now, this is an ongoing problem all over the world. Because not that long ago, maybe I still got it up on my website, hold on. But not that long ago, we had that in Canada, where the RCMP didn't want to report on some of the crimes being taking place because they were worried. They were worried that the fact it was done by immigrants, that people would be upset, that people would have possibly, stoked racial tensions. And it doesn't look like I have it. Oops. Dozens of teenage girls suspected of being groomed and abused in Manchester by gangs of men from Asian backgrounds. And there it is again. Asian backgrounds. Not Pakistani, not Middle Eastern, not Muslim. Asian backgrounds. Gangs of men from Asian backgrounds were failed because police feared upsetting race relations, a new probe has suggested. Victims repeatedly alerted officers about sexual assaults, giving names and addresses of those involved, but in almost all cases, no action was taken. Now here's the thing. Let's not pretend that it is simply the only reason that no action was taken was because of the fact that it was worried about race relations. Now, that definitely was a big one, because UK has become way more politically correct. Too much so. But some of the reasons is because these cops were bought off by these gangs. in order to look the other way as children were raped and pimped out and murdered. And if you spoke out about this, you were thrown in prison. That's what happened to Tommy Robinson, regardless if he's a Zionist and an Israeli asset. The man was still thrown in prison for talking about this situation. But you can also guarantee, not only were these cops bought off, they were participants. No doubt that they were participants in the situation that was going on here. Just like the cops we've seen all around in all the stories we've talked about today. Talking about the cops in Waco, talking about the cops in Virginia, talking about the cops in France. It's no different than in the UK. They're bought off and they're involved with this shit. This is why they turned a blind eye to it. And the UK, in many of its institutions, have had a pedophile problem. They have a pedophile problem in politics. There was the Westminster pedophile gang. The whole Westminster pedophile rings that were going on, that were covered up and called fake news. No, these never happened. They were fake news and lies. There was Jimmy Savile from the BBC, who was friends to the royal family. And do not get me started on the royal families and their involvement with pedophilia. Did you know that in Canada, the Queen can't come here? Because 10 kids went missing in a residential school when the Queen visited Canada, along with Charles, I believe, as her husband. They all went missing, 10 of them. The Queen and Charles showed up at the school, said they were going to take them all out, we'll take these kids out, we'll have a nice little field trip. 10 of those kids, and I believe those were the 10 that went out with them, never came back. Don't get me started on them. And then the BBC itself has a pedophile problem. It's freaking everywhere. And you can guarantee that is there inside of the British police forces all over the frickin' country. And this is the main reason. Race relations without a doubt. But then along with being paid off and along with being participants in the rapes, in the pimping out, in the fucking murders of these young girls, these poor girls who didn't get to grow up. These poor girls taken too early, deflowered in the worst possible way. And they could not have cared less. They didn't care. They laughed when it was happening. They even went out of their way to cover it up. That has been confirmed. We know for a fact that they covered it up. They called some of these women liars. Some of these girls, not even women, girls. They called them liars. They told them, don't press charges. They told them not to talk about it. This is what they did to Britain's youth. Now, of course, it's the job of the police to keep the people safe, and they failed that. But more than that, let's not deny, most of the police in Britain are men. There are plenty of female officers for whatever the hell they do. But it is the duty, it is the fucking duty of a man to look after his woman. And look after the women of society. That's supposed to be what a man is about. You raise your kids, you provide for your family, and you protect the women of your society. And they failed that. Willfully, they failed that over and over and over and over again. And like I said about the French police, sooner or later, the British people are going to have enough. Enough of these rapes. Enough of their daughters becoming victims. And they're going to get angry. And when they get angry, they are going to string these cops up in the center of town. They will hang them there as an image for everybody else who let this happen. And the politicians are just as complicit in all of this. The day of the rope is coming. I don't know whether it'll be here in Canada, because like I said, it seems that Canadians are too passive. But the day of the rope is coming. And when that day comes, cops and politicians are going to have to answer for what they've done and answer for their failures. And it'll be a very, very bad day for them. That's all I have for you all today. For anyone who stuck around, I appreciate it. For anyone viewing this after, I would ask you to go to the True North Report. Please bookmark it. I would greatly appreciate that. Please share the link, share the stories, like and subscribe to this stream, give the thumbs up, and share it around. I would greatly appreciate it. And again, if you like my work, please feel free to donate to my Patreon. I greatly appreciate it, and it will help me to produce more content for you guys. Allow me to put out more articles. Allow me to stream more for you. And as well as help me upgrade some of my equipment on here. Maybe get some better software in order to stream. Maybe get a better microphone or something like that. As always, take care of yourselves. This has been the True North Report. News everyone needs to know.